I think irreproducibility is a serious problem. It's something that we've tried to address at the Nature journals. But it's useful to define different kinds of reproducibility. The irreproducibility problems that have been highlighted are mainly in translating basic research into drug development. And I think there are a variety of problems there. Sometimes it's sloppiness or it's biased design of experiments that doesn't allow the results to be reproduced. But sometimes it's just that the original observation may not be as robust as it's initially thought. And it's very important to validate these initial observation and to establish the robustness, but it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and the question is who will do that?
Irreproducibility, not being able to reproduce data that someone publishes is really a problem. A lot of times for many diseases, funds are really limited. If people publish a spurious result, it can send the whole field in the wrong direction. And with no one retracting the paper or stepping up and saying that there was an error, a lot of money is wasted. And frankly, for families and people supporting research on the disease, it's a real setback.
It'll be one of the solutions to the problem. It's a complex problem with many issues associated with it. I think starting with the standards issue is a good way of addressing that problem. Okay, there's also issues of training and methodologies, and besides the standards that need to be raised up in the quality, there's also what you're doing with the standards. How are you doing the experimentation? What kind of quality control are you applying to what you're trying to do? I mean, and so there's also, it's a reflection of the problem of the training of students today and how they are managed by their mentors.
The development of standards is something that the GBSI, Global Biological Standards Institute, is strongly advocating as a positive step towards this issue of data irreproducibility. We see this rather than as a horrible negative. We see this as an opportunity to really bring forward the greater awareness and use of standards in life science research.
The question of whether or not standards should be voluntary is a very important one. I'll step back to several years ago when the ISO 9000 standards first came into being worldwide. Those are actually voluntary standards, but it's quite well known that if a manufacturer chooses to not follow the ISO standards, they will receive a lot of questions from their customers, and many customers may choose to not do business with them because they do not follow those standards.
They should be voluntarily enforced by peer pressure. So the question about standards and how we might enforce them. If you don't know you're going to get checked, people tend to cut corners. And so I think there has to be some process by which people know that the work that they're doing and their conformance to some of the standards and the best practices of doing their kind of scientific research is going to get noticed by someone. And whether you call that a voluntary system or whether it's enforced by publications requiring that you show that you've done it, or by regulatory agencies, of course, saying before you submit things to the regulatory process, you have to do that, as more scientists and even the academic setting think they're moving forward into translational and more regulatory areas. There's going to be some kind of transparency, and that's really the enforcement mechanism.
I think the secret is in bringing all the stakeholders together. I think no one group can be unbiased, but if you bring a lot of different stakeholders together, those people who develop science and technology, those people who are practicing the science, the advocacy groups, the organizations that are funding the research, bring them all together with all their objectives, usually you can get everyone to row in the same direction.
Aligning the community is very important. I think one of the things that's vital to making sure that all the stakeholders are at the table is to have meetings such as this. So the GBSI is trying to pave the way in developing standards for the life sciences industry. And as more and more researchers get acclimated to the conversation, more and more stakeholders will be involved, and you'll have a greater awareness, and then the whole process becomes more efficient and more effective. And the FDA, which is always underneath the gun, chasing new technology, can react very rapidly and very effectively because everyone's on board.
So aligning the community to solve this problem is really one of GBSI's overall far-reaching goals. And obviously, the life science community is a diverse, multifaceted community of scientists, clinicians, academics, industry people, and we realize that it's a compartmentalized, siloed community. But I think one of the first steps is to agree as a group that this is an issue that we really need to take on now. And GBSI is there as a platform to facilitate that happening at all levels.